Welcome, everyone, to the Happiness Journey with drdan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior and neurolinguistic practitioner specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DNB Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found on lifecoach.drdanamzallag.com. In today's second episode of season 34, I'm very excited to have Todd Smith as our special guest and podcaster discussing the psychological challenges of living as a highly sensitive person, impacting your daily decision and behaviors, and the difficulties in setting clear boundaries to avoid being taken advantage of by people around you. So without further ado, and without all of our previous episodes, I will leave it up to the guest to properly introduce himself, as no one else can do a better job. Todd, the floor is yours.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's really great to be here. I work with highly sensitive people, and I'm a highly sensitive person myself. A lot of the people I work with feel overwhelmed easily. They think deeply, they care a lot, and often they end up carrying quite a bit of stress, even when things are going actually not that bad. And what I help people see is that a lot of this stress isn't actually coming from what's happening around them, but from what the mind is doing with it. So instead of trying to manage or control life more, we look at how to question the thoughts that are creating that pressure in the first place. And then when that starts to shift, people often experience a kind of relief and clarity that doesn't depend on everything going right, which kind of changes your relationship with happiness quite a lot.
Oh, it certainly does. Absolutely. And thank you so much for being here today. And as you know, in this podcast, what we're trying to do is provide tips and advice to all of our listeners out there, especially those who are dealing with similar challenges that the guest that I invite in the show feels on a daily basis. So thank you again for being here today. And so let's just jump directly into highly sensitive people. So the fact is that when you feel that you want to please others, do you automatically fall in that category of an HSP? Or is it something that other signs will tell you that, okay, I am a highly sensitive person?
Yeah, there are actually two different things. Being a highly sensitive person is something you're born with. It's a trait. It's not any kind of imbalance. It's just being highly aware of other people. And so you pick up on nuance, you pick up on subtle changes of tone of voice. You're very empathetic by nature, and you care about others. But that alone does not mean that you're going to necessarily get caught into needing to please others or have difficulty saying no. There's a tendency, because of that sensitivity, to move in that direction, to fall into that kind of coping pattern. But in reality, it's an overlay of just a kind of confusion that the mind gets into of thinking that you're responsible for the other person's experience. And that can be worked through and that can be moved through so that you can still be sensitive without being caught in that kind of pattern.
But then again, Todd, if let's say you fall in that pattern, I mean, obviously those who are very empathetic will attract specific narcissistic behaviors because they will know they could be taken advantage of. So how do you protect yourself as an HSP when it comes to letting people know that you are empathetic about their situation, that you care, but at the same time, I'm not like a doormat. I cannot be taken advantage of.
Yes. It comes to distinguishing between what is their experience and being empathetic towards their experience, feeling compassion for someone, and being responsible for their experience. And I call it introducing a kind of healthy separation between myself as an empathetic or highly sensitive person and the other person. And so when I have a kind of healthy separation, I know where I end and where the other person begins, and I allow them to have their emotion or have their disappointment or their upset even, And it doesn't have to mean that I need to change or I need to do something to fix that.
But so we mentioned about empathetic and HSP. So are they intrinsically correlated, which is, are they synonymous to each other? If someone is empathetic, are they necessarily HSP?
I believe, if I remember the exact science, I believe all empaths are highly sensitive people, but not all highly sensitive people are empaths.
Oh, so it's not linear. Okay, so it's not then. Okay. But then again, the end result is that the effect on other people are very similar, because if you are either empath or not HSP, or HSP and not empath, then does that mean automatically that you people will still try to cross those boundaries, and you're not going to be able to protect yourself adequately to avoid falling in that trap of being taken advantage of?
It's quite possible that people will try to take advantage of that. People like empathetic people, especially narcissists, love that.
Mhm.
So it's very possible that they will try to cross your boundaries, and your boundaries will be tested a lot. That can be one of the main areas of growth for a sensitive person or an empathetic person. But that doesn't mean that you have to fall into it. You may fall into it many times, but as you learn, as you grow, as you gain clarity, then that can actually begin to shift.
So you mentioned earlier, Todd, that it is a trait. So does it come based on how you develop your personality in your direct surroundings, which means that if, let's say, people around you are empath, that you will absorb that kind of trait? Or do you feel that because of childhood rejection, you feel that you have to be nice to other people, and then you become HSP?
I believe that HSP is something you're born with. I believe it's an actual, like, probably DNA kind of trait. I'm not sure of that, but that's my hunch.
Okay.
And the way the researchers talk about it, they say it's more about temperament than personality. So sensitivity is that you pick up on a lot more subtlety in interactions. You process things more deeply. You're naturally more emotionally attuned. And this is just a kind of temperament. And then the personality develops based on that. And I believe that it is influenced by what's going on in your environment and who you're around, how it's going to actually show up for you. But I believe that the actual trait is just kind of how you're wired.
So it is innate, not acquired.
That's what I believe, yes. And I think there's research pointing towards that, although I don't know if it's fully, it's probably theoretical at this point.
So is it possible, Todd, that with enough, I would say, therapy or cognitive behavior psychotherapy, that people can actually alleviate the, I would say the not the amount, but I would say the gravity of HSP. I mean, is there specific like just autism? I mean, we have like different stage of autism, or different cases of narcissism, like stage 1 to stage 4, or vulnerable narcissism, or malignant narcissism. So is there a certain level where HSP can go, which is too much of it and too little?
So this is where it's really important to distinguish between HSP and stress. Stress overlays on top of the HSP trait. The trait itself is not an imbalance. It's not something that's needs to be corrected. It's the stress that's on top of it and the interpretations that can go with that that lead to all kinds of difficulties. But when they've looked at different species, for example, they've looked at over 100 different species, and it's always about 15 to 20% of every population of all different species, looked at birds, fish, insects, show up demonstrating these highly sensitive traits, meaning that they pause and think about what's going on. They notice danger more quickly. They're more attuned to relational patterns, and they play a certain role in any society. So that doesn't need to change. What needs to change is the lack of boundaries or the lack of clarity on how to interact with others, or the need to try to keep everything peaceful, so that you end up getting enmeshed with other people. That's a stress overlay, not the actual HSP trait. So to answer your question, I don't think HSP is going to change at all, but stress certainly can be reduced, and clarity can be gained through inner work.
Okay, so for all the listeners that actually are captivated by what you're saying right now, Todd, in terms of those especially suffering from HSP, or not, I would say not the word suffer, pardon my chosen words, but those who actually are experiencing and dealing and living with it, is there a specific tips that you would give or advice on how they can decipher from who is genuine versus who is there to be able to be taking advantage of them?
That's a tricky one. Yes, exactly. That is the challenge of living in this world, and sometimes it's hard to tell what is genuine and what is not. Time certainly helps, and intuition helps. Highly sensitive people have a good intuition generally, although they tend to override that intuition. So if you if you get a feeling like, this somebody wants something, or this person is it doesn't feel like they're connecting with me in an equal way, then this can be a little just a red flag to be like, maybe this is not someone I want to get closer to.
Mhm. But in the professional world, or the like in organization and so on and so forth, Todd, um, do you think that those who are dealing with HSP may have more difficulties in climbing the hierarchy in organization because most other people will take advantage of them and they will take their place?
Yeah, I would say that the climbing instinct, it's those there in a lot of us. It's less in highly sensitive people. We actually are wired to go into depth, and we prefer depth. We tend to prefer one-on-one conversations rather than being uh, kind of a leader in that other way. Although leadership is an interesting point, because HSPs see things very clearly. They can analyze things very deeply. And so as a result, if they are in a position of leadership, or in a position where they're associated with something that they're trying to create, or as a group, they can actually contribute very strongly. But they tend not to be as interested in jockeying for position, or trying to, like, political power. It's just not, doesn't tend to be where their interest is. So yes, they may get elbowed out, but in the end, they may not mind that, because it's not exactly where they're trying to get to.
So obviously, I mean, those in position of power or leadership and all are primarily just like type A personalities, which is certainly not HSP.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, any other like specific advice on how to understand, especially, I mean, like as you said, they have intuition, but yet a lot of their doubts supersede that intuition, making them wonder if this person that they're dealing with is either genuine or um, being taken advantage of. So, is there like some way to be able to understand the psychology behind all that and be able to be more in tune with that inner voice of yours versus having to find excuses for it?
Yeah, I think it has to do with where your attention is. If you're focused outward, then your attention is going to be on the person who is trying to manipulate you. And you may end up getting caught in that trap more quickly because of that outward focus. If your focus is inward, and you're asking yourself, what do I want? What is my interest? You may be in touch quite quickly with, this isn't really my type of person. I'm not really actually wanting to go where they're pointing me to go. And so the missing element for a lot of us is being in connection with our internal wisdom, which is always there, but we tend to miss it because we're focused on trying to take care of others or be aware of others or try to it's kind of distracting because they're so loud, right? They're so in your face. It takes some stillness and some pacing. Like you have to actually take time. I like to tell people, like, you don't have to make a decision right on the spot when somebody's pressuring you. You can just say, well, give me some time. I'm going to think about that. It's a good question, or thanks for the invitation. Like, you need to take time to come back in and get in touch with what you're actually feeling. And that can be where you can start to lead yourself in a way that is more healthy.
Okay, so let me ask you a question that is going to have basically two questions in one. Okay.
Okay.
So there's a say that success is what happens after you survive your mistakes. Okay. Now, the question is that if an HSP individual has been taken advantage of, do they hold grudge or do they allow these mistakes to be able to learn from it and not repeat them again? But it seems like an HSP will always forget the bad thing that happened to them or being manipulated, and they will continue doing the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah, I hear you. So holding a grudge is something that can happen with an HSP, with anyone, and and then overriding that, trying to forget that memory, and then repeating that is certainly a pattern that HSPs can fall into. The reason it happens, I believe, is that we get caught in that wishful thinking that they were better than they were, or just thinking like maybe it wasn't so bad, and we minimize what was actually what we should be staying away from.
Mhm.
And this is just again falling asleep to my own inner experience. My inner experience was that was terrible. Why would I do that again? And yet when I'm forgetful, when I'm not in touch with that, then I fall for the same pattern. So to break that pattern requires going inward and really doing some inner work and getting not just intellectually clear, but emotionally clear. Like there's a difference. We can be intellectually clear, wise. We've read a ton of books. We know a lot of things. We can see the patterns, all of that. But there's a part of us, maybe a very immature part of us, that is still believing, still caught in the story, caught in the drama, has its wants, and all of that can end up overriding whatever wisdom is there on the intellectual level. So I love to go inward and let that emotional part be heard, let it be seen for what it's actually thinking, and then let it begin to question its own beliefs so that they can actually start to shift on an emotional level.
Okay, so then at this point, those who are dealing with HSP and those who are actually challenged by what's going on, especially in our society nowadays, now it's like kind of with everyone that is struggle financially, emotionally, spiritually, and so on and so forth. What's going on around in our society, does it affect the HSP even though they have no control over the wars, they have no control over the suffering, they have no control over anything? Do they understand that their implication or their feelings towards the incident that they see on a daily basis is not their responsibility to be able to absorb that negative energy?
That's what they need to see. If they don't see that, they will be caught up very strongly in all of that because we as HSPs are very much affected by negativity of any kind, by injustice of any kind. We feel that stuff and we get carried away with that. And so it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the news or by all the things going on in our world today. And so, what has to happen in order to stay sane, in order to stay comfortable and clear inside, is that there has to be a clear differentiation between what is my responsibility, what can I control, and what are the things I can't control. And when I'm clear about that, then even though something negative is happening outside, if I'm really clear that that's not something that is my job to control or that I even can control, then I don't love it, but I can at least have some kind of space there and I can go about my life and do what I can do. And that feels empowering instead of disempowering.
So then for an HSP, is it really recommended to be able to focus more on avoidance instead of awareness? And let me be more detailed, which means that if let's say someone goes and get or go through like a social media detox and detach themselves from the fake news that they have, I mean, on the regular basis. So we all know that what we see online is 90% fake anyway. So the fact that they detach themselves completely from all those, negative news and they really focus into what they see on their own versus what they hear, is that a good way to be able to kind of like live your life peacefully as an HSP?
For HSPs, we have to have a certain amount of protection around us. Because of the sensitivity, it's like having a very exposed nerve. And if you put that nerve into a very chaotic environment or one filled with lies and deceit, then it's going to cringe. It's going to affect us and it's going to end up causing a kind of shutdown in a way. It can cause overwhelm. HSPs reach overwhelm much faster than anyone else. And so as a result, there has to be a pacing to exposure to the things that cause that overwhelm. So it doesn't mean you have to bury your head completely in the sand, but there has to be some limitation to how deeply you're going into the directions that cause that kind of overwhelm.
And are HSP people more prone to depression?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would say um, they're more prone to, like I mentioned, overwhelm. And when overwhelm of any kind is not dealt with, it can grow into either anxiety or depression. But I don't know specifically if HSPs are more prone to depression. I would say overall, they HSPs tend to get stressed more and to get stuck in stress more. There's something called differential susceptibility with this trait. And what that means is that HSPs, when put in a negative environment, perform worse than the average person because of that sensitivity. They get into a vicious cycle, downward spiral, and they have trouble getting out of it because they process everything so deeply and they feel everything so deeply. But on the other hand, put the same highly sensitive person in a positive environment or give them the right tools, and they will actually perform better than the average person because, again, they go deeply into everything that they do, and they really engage with it quite well. So it's a differential susceptibility. They're susceptible to negativity, but they're also susceptible to real positive gain and growth as well.
But then again, if let's say we base our research on the depression versus those who actually know how to manage those symptoms of depression and HSP dealing with all the overstimulation that they work with, and as you know, as you and I know, Todd, there's around 60,000 thoughts passing
Hmm.
through our mind on a daily basis, and for the HSP, they have to really kind of like go through those thoughts and analyze them and process them versus other people that are not HSP, they kind of like just shrug it off and say, okay, well,
Yeah.
I will keep it for only a second with me and then I'm gonna let it go. Actually, there was an analogy or a metaphor that a teacher, I'm not sure that you've seen it or not, um, he was in front of the class and he actually showed everyone a glass of water. And then
Hmm.
he said, and he asked everyone, how much do you think this weigh? Everyone was raising their hand. Oh, maybe like it's 12 ounce or a quarter of a pound, whatever it is. And he said, okay, if I hold that glass for a minute, that will be fine, right? If I just like keep it at my eye level. I said, yeah. But if I keep that same glass for an hour, I'm going to start feeling tingling in my shoulder. I'm going to start feeling muscle soreness. And if I keep it for a day, it's going to even get worse. But the glass of water, the amount of water in that glass didn't change. It is the amount of time that I hold it from within myself that
Yeah.
changed. So that in itself can be the same for HSP. If they hold on for that negative energy for too long, then that shows that they will process it, or they will deeply process it as something that is only that they only face negativity on in their lives, and they don't let the positive to come in. So is that something that is similar?
Yes, absolutely. This is you hit the nail right on the head. That is what causes HSPs to get stuck in negativity is that we process it so deeply. And if you don't have ways of processing your negative experiences, then they will continue to loop and they will continue to go deeper and you can just dig yourself in deeper and deeper. So the key is to there's two ways to control it. One is decrease your exposure to negativity. That's one thing, and that can help. The other is sometimes you can't control that, and maybe it's not good to completely control that. The other thing is when you're exposed to negative experiences, then do you have a way of processing them? Do you have a way of releasing them? Do you have a way of working through them so that that no longer grips you? And if you do, then you're going to become more resilient. If you don't, then it just goes into that continuing just buildup of stress and deepening of stress.
Before a podcast, I mean, I always go and research thoroughly on the subject, Todd, before I bring my guest in. And the question that I came across, and I want to ask you is, are HSP people unhappy?
Good question. And that depends. I would say it depends on their stress level. If a HSP is stressed, then they are very unhappy. If an HSP is not stressed, they have the capacity for deep happiness. In fact, one of the areas of sensitivity that they've studied is that the HSPs are sensitive to positivity. They're equally sensitive to positivity, and they can go as deeply into that as they can go into negativity. So it really depends on where you point the mind. If you point it towards something negative, then it will just keep going in that direction. And as an HSP, it will go deeply in that direction. If you point it towards something positive, it will go deeply into that direction and will gain the benefits of that.
Because at the same time, and you make a very, very good point there, Todd, is that when I did some research about the HSP, it did say that people with increased sensitivity may face higher risk of anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. And they do say that sensitivity is a distinct biological grounded trait that is influenced by genetics, early life experiences, and brain activity. So that in itself causes, like if you look at early childhood trauma, those who have faced trauma, can HSP, even though you said it is innate, can it resurface and get worse?
Absolutely. Yeah. Trauma in anyone can resurface and it can certainly get worse. And with HSP, it's no exception. So, dealing with that trauma, processing that trauma in a good way is a way to free oneself from that grip on the system. And when that happens, then the effect of past trauma doesn't have to be debilitating.
Okay. And when you say debilitating, it means that it should not affect their daily lives?
Yeah, it's like depending on how fully you've processed something, it will continue or not continue to affect your daily life. And it may be very subtle, but the more, like if you've really processed an old trauma, then the test for me is that when you look back at that trauma, it's not the experience is different. It's not a feeling of overwhelm anymore. It's not a feeling of high stress anymore to even remember it. It's like, okay, yeah, I see what happened and I see it from a clear point of view and I've worked through it. And that in that way, it's not like a weight holding you down emotionally anymore.
So I know that before we end this podcast here, Todd, I know that you are doing like you're also hosting a podcast. So does your podcast primarily serve HSP people, or do you bring guests that are HSP as well, or you talk about anything that is that specific trait?
Yeah, it is specifically for highly sensitive people. It's called stress management for highly sensitive people. And most of my episodes are solo episodes. I tend to just focus on one topic and go deeply into that. And every once in a while, I'll have a guest, but it's more of the exception.
Okay, and how can people find your podcast? I mean, if it's a monologue primarily, how can they listen to it or get access to it, especially those who are HSP? They want to be able to hear more about it, on how to manage their life, how to manage the boundaries that they have to set, etc.
Absolutely. It's on Apple and Spotify and all the other channels. And you just search for stress management for highly sensitive people. Even if you just type in HSP, you will find it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Todd, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. And again, thank you sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we all appreciate your participation to this episode by sharing with our audience the challenges living as a highly sensitive person and the tips you gave to our listeners about setting clear boundaries to make confident and aligned decision to live a happy life. So to our millions of listeners out there, we also hope that you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. And we're very excited of what's ahead in season 34 of the Happiness Journey with drdan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. So here are some concluding words of wisdom. You don't have to stay stuck in patterns that leave you feeling drained or disconnected. Becoming more confident and connected starts with staying true to yourself while still respecting others. Facing discomfort instead of avoiding it helps you communicate more honestly. Constantly trying to be nice can lead to people pleasing, which drains your energy and clouds your judgment. Inner work allows you to recognize your needs and set boundaries as an act of self respect. These boundaries create clarity, balance, and healthier relationship between you and everybody around you. For highly sensitive people, confidence grows from alignment rather than approval. Trusting your inner voice reduces overthinking and brings clearer decisions. Choosing yourself leads to greater peace, stability, and genuine connection. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life. Stay tuned for our next episode.